As an entrepreneur, your job is not to run a business. It is to drive change. My vision is to unlock the power of entrepreneurs by teaching them how to become visionary leaders.
How would a person go about communicating this type of vision?
Number one is to make the most out of your brand. Ask yourself two questions. Who do you serve? What is the one impact you're going to make?
A lot of people are solopreneurs. How does this message fit them?
A brand always starts with 10 customers. If you want to innovate, you can't just invent something once. Industry leaders start ahead and they never stop.
Welcome to the show, Coach Noel.
Thank you, Curtis. It's great to be here.
Yes, it's my pleasure. My pleasure. You know, we talked the other day, and I was so excited that I have an opportunity to kind of sit down with you again and share some ideas and share with the audience. You know, let them know who you are as much as I know. And I've met you like once, but it feels like I've been knowing you for a lifetime. That's the kind of spirit you have. So I
I loved it.
appreciate
And
that.
we had this great jam session because we could go into that deep programming that people have. And I get really philosophical and I say, you know, the only fear I have left is genius, unrecognized.
There you go. I
Yeah,
love
so
it.
we had this great jam session about talking about the inner work it takes to really put your art out into the world and say, here I am, this is what I'm doing, and not have the weight inside holding you back, which is definitely a theme that runs through the way I live my life and how I pursue my dream in business and leadership.
Absolutely. I mean, and everybody has gone through that, and so everybody has had that moment in their life, and that they felt like they were stuck, and they feel like they didn't have no options, and they felt like they were not good enough. And but before we get into that, because I'm really excited to get into that, kind of share with the audience a little bit about your journey. How did you get to be Coach Noel?
Well, I have always had a dream of speaking to millions of people, to being an author, and to being a global thought leader. And I've been in leadership and entrepreneurialism my whole life. You know, at church growing up, I was the person who, you know, I got with the Franklin Covey thing with a coach, and they talked about your natural gifts and how to step into those gifts and develop them. But I didn't really pursue my dream. I kind of did everything around the dream, but pursue the meat of it, the very heart of it. But then 5 years ago, my whole life blew up. Right during the middle of the COVID shutdowns, I ended a 15-year marriage. I moved to a
Wow.
new state to get divorced. So I moved states 3 times in 2 years with my toddler in the back seat, you know, wondering, whoa, when are they going to let me get a
Right.
job? And then I was in my new apartment, you know, I had just gotten the table out of a box and I opened up my laptop and I found out that my master teacher had died from cancer.
Wow. Wow.
And that was the dividing line. If I could separate my life into two parts, part one and part two, in that moment where I knew she was gone,
Right.
I could have lost myself to grief entirely. But something amazing happened right in that moment. Instead of losing myself, I found myself. What I needed to do to live my dream and share my vision and
Mm-hmm.
help other people in the way that was most meaningful to me, it all came to me in that moment. And what what really reassured me was that the first law of thermodynamics, there we go, I'm not a science person, but it entered my mind. It says that in a system, energy is neither created nor destroyed.
That's
It
true.
is only transformed.
That's right. Bespoke Human Potential Coaching sponsors this show. Bespoke helps CEOs, founders, and entrepreneurs get rid of those blind spots that they've been carrying around since childhood. So if you're stuck and have some blocks, click the link below for your clarity call or scan the QR code if you're on video. Let's get rid of those blinds. Now back to the interview. From one state to the next. That's right. I mean, that's one of the things that I've lived by so much. I mean, you had so much you just spoke about. I mean, it just kind of resonated with me we didn't talk about this, in I think in the other segment, but 4 years ago, we lost our son, our oldest son,
Mm.
and I remember we were in the room where he was transitioning, and my wife made the same decision. She says, this moment is not going to define me. I'm not going to allow this moment to just take me, and I lose myself in this moment. And she made a decision. So I think it's so powerful that we can share with the audience that just by making a decision, that's when
Right.
life actually starts. I mean, the transition or
That's
the
right.
transformation actually
And I thought
starts.
about what it is she really did for us, why her studio was home plate, and the value of becoming an artist. She taught me how to access my thoughts and feelings so that this dream I had in the back of my head, write books. Okay, I've got a block. I can't write a book. I don't know
Right.
what that deal is. But I thought about what it is she did for people, what she did. She was the center of a community that she had built over 40 years. And I said, it's time for me to step into the role where I am the center of my own community,
There you go.
where I do this work and I gather people, and it's like a kaleidoscope. Whoever's the center, it's like all the shapes and colors move around the central figure. And I said, it's time to go from being a student to the master.
Wow, wow, wow. Now, since you are now finding yourself being a master teacher, what is it like? I mean, what is it what drives you now?
Absolutely. So I had to go big because, if you can tell by looking at my hair and the animal things happening on my body, this is style. Don't make me defend it. I
Right.
had to go big, and I challenged myself to, with my writing, with my blog and everything, I challenged myself to become the global expert in vision driven profit within 6 months. And so I took one course about PR and how to speak to publications, and I wrote
Right.
a blog every day, and I just started this conversation with the whole world about leadership and entrepreneurialism. And I shared my vision. I shared my vision that as an entrepreneur, your job is not to run a business, it is to drive change.
Right.
People rely on you to change things, to lead people through that tension of change,
Right.
because you see something better on the other side and you're willing to do it. And so I took that challenge, and 4 months later, the founder of my favorite magazine called me from Stockholm, and he asked if I would like to receive a global award for the first blog article I wrote. And
Beautiful.
so there's so much synergy, and it was about visionary leadership. It was about, and he says, this is it. If I had one person winning an award this year, it is you. And yeah, that's how I really launched my career and really defined vision driven profit.
Yeah, well, I think go back a little bit. I just want you to share a little bit because you said something that the audience might have missed. The first thing you did, part of what you did was you said you shared your vision, meaning you
That's right.
put it out there, you put it out in the universe, you let everybody know exactly who you were becoming and who you had already
That's right.
become.
And it was my lifelong vision.
Bespoke Human Potential Coaching sponsors this show. Bespoke helps CEOs, founders, and entrepreneurs get rid of those blind spots that they've been carrying around since childhood. So if you're stuck and have some blocks, click the link below for your clarity call or scan the QR code if you're on video. Let's get rid of those blinds. Now back to the interview.
So I made sure to share the big vision because we can't control a lot of things. We,
Okay.
we don't all have a lot of money. I didn't have followers. There's no one just, go to Harvard and have someone say, here, you're a thought leader now. No, but I had to share the biggest vision that was the most inspiring to me. And I told them that my vision is to unlock the power of entrepreneurs by teaching them how to become visionary leaders so that we can improve the lives of millions because something is missing. That's what a thought leader says. The thought leader says, here's what's missing,
Okay.
right? Here's the big picture. And and here's where people are, and here's where they really want to be. What's missing? There's a thought. And that's why vision driven profit is not just a set of ideas. It's not just some more information to add. It is a paradigm that explains how people like Steve Jobs of Apple, Jeff Bezos of Amazon, how Harley Davidson, it explains exactly the traits that you need to create an industry leading job. They're leadership traits.
Right.
So it's not what we learn about in business. These are the human elements that help you become a leader and an influencer. And that's important. And that's what's missing in most people's brand. So it's really nice to bring it all together. This is one paradigm that you can put your hands on and
Right.
use.
Beautiful, beautiful. Now, I mean, think about it now. You talked a little bit about earlier. You talked a little bit about the fact that, you have a toddler and you running this business and you're doing all these things. How do you actually manage to do all that stuff?
Absolutely. Well, first I had to have him be fitness. Fitness was his first language. He didn't really talk until he was 4. And I'm the perfect boy mom. I mean, when he was upset, I'd roll around on the ground and just kind of bite him a little bit. So I was really, nature just made me a good boy mom. And I think he and I always really understood each other really well. If he was a total little hellion like my sister was, I'd probably have to lock him up in the basement. I'm just joking. Just joking. But I really understood, and I want to be a good example to him because divorce is not only difficult, but if you're in a situation where divorce is a necessity, your life has probably been pretty messy for a number of years. And
Right.
my son was the number one driver behind me living my vision because, understanding psychodynamics within families, children will limit themselves to match their parents' energy,
Oh, absolutely.
right?
Absolutely.
Children will sacrifice their own wellness, their own hopes, their own potential. And I wanted my son to unconsciously know that I am pursuing fulfillment in my life and that I'm doing it, that I'm not sitting there silently hurting because I'm not I'm not living my dream. And I think kids pick up on that like little sponges, like they
Oh,
just live out
absolutely.
their
Yeah.
parents' conflict.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that's a part of even what I let people understand most of our values, who we are actually is branded, or we basically are programmed during that period of time. So think about it, by you living your best self in the midst of the situation you were going through, you were actually teaching your son a
That's
greater
right.
lesson. That,
And
people said,
and it
don't
gave
listen to what I say,
exactly what it
show
is.
me.
They will live out your deepest pattern. And oh, you
Yes.
don't even have to say anything,
Night. You don't have to say, and that's the thing about it. It's like what a lot of people, I tell my kids this year, but what are you showing them?
That's
That's
right.
what they're actually picking up. They want to see the actions that you do. That's what actually is embedded in their minds and their souls and their being.
That's
And so,
right. And,
like,
and it gave me a breakthrough too, having a child. I said, what's the difference between having a child? You look at a little human being who's all potential, their genetics, their
right,
their mind, their bodies, and I got a huge breakthrough in leadership. What do I do with this child today to shape who he is in 20 years? How do you lead someone to who they want to become? And when
right.
we talk about visionary leadership and creating culture and creating teams, if you looked at the number one reason why people love to jump on board with these top brands, oh, they will tell you they want to be this person. And they are refugees from other companies who won't allow them to be that.
Mm.
And so it's really important that you it's like a chain reaction.
Yeah.
You have to think about who do you want to be in 20 years and how do you create an organization that has a pathway for you to do that.
Well, I think part of it starts with your personal vision. So I know you talk a little bit about that. So kind of share with the audience what it means to have a vision, because that's one of the, probably in some situations, the scariest thing is that we talk about vision. And so what does that mean to you, and how is that actually
Oh,
defined, Noel?
absolutely. A vision to me means that you have a clear picture of the future and you understand the ideals behind it. And that's a real secret of creating visceral connection with other people. If you speak the language of ideals, if you take a person, they're stuck here, but they want to be here, and you paint a picture of what their future looks like, that's the ultimate form of engagement. And again, these are human elements. People will naturally, when you have this vision, that gives you the charisma you need for people to follow you. If you have a group of 10 people, there's 2 people who are going to step forward. Those are called leaders. And about 7 people are going to follow them. And one person, I don't know about them. We all have like Uncle Frank. We don't know what he's doing. But, but you know,
Never know what he might do.
different. That's a whole different conversation. But a lot of people say, how do I have the charisma to do this? It's not a personality. You don't need extra IQ points. You don't need to be staggeringly attractive and, living at the gym. The only charisma you need is to share a vision that leads people to their ideal self and their ideal future.
Right. I know you talked about industry leading brands. You talked about number one. You did talk about like creating a vision. And then
Yes.
you're also talking about now also communicating that vision. So, I mean, because one of the things is to create the vision, but communicating it, how would you say a person will go about communicating this type of vision?
Excellent. So let me just make this condensed and concise that I studied Steve Jobs and Apple and from start to finish his whole life and how he translated his personal vision into the Apple brand and Pixar and how he handpicked the teams that created 7 different industries and reinvented the retail store in his relatively short life. So I studied this pattern that he had that I said, why could he do this? And not only was it him, but it was also other industry leaders like Jeff Bezos of Amazon, Oprah Winfrey, Harley Davidson, the Spanx founder, Sarah Blakely. So I saw a pattern that they all had these traits of visionary leadership. But not only that, they also created the foundation of their brand for industry leadership. And it took them all 10 years. And I'll tell you exactly how they did it. Number one is you need to create a clear vision. That means you need to think 20 years in the future. Frankly, if you don't plan 20 years in the future, your company may have no place in it. We're not mind readers. In fact, half of what I talk about is these brands at their own extinction events, talking about this process. Let's go back to 1997. Apple was going to be completely bankrupt. Steve Jobs had 1 year to save the company from complete insolvency, and he decided within 10 years we're going to be the industry leading brand. And the first step was vision, being a clear, well communicated vision. And this is not about shuffling back and forth. The one big problem with business is people in leadership, they shuffle. They want to shuffle for this trend and they want to shuffle. Vision solves that problem because everything's about alignment and calibration. He could interview every person in the company, and if they didn't align with the vision, if they didn't share ideals, they were gone. So that's the first thing.
So what you're saying then is that this vision is not only communicated at the top level, but it's also communicated throughout all the ranks in the company.
That's right, because that visceral connection starts inside the company. You shouldn't worry about a customer at all until, you have to have a cohesive vision, and it starts with the leaders. If there's a lack of vision in the company, you can never blame a low-ranked person. It all starts at the top. That's why Steve Jobs hired all the corporate bozos. He says, gone out. And here's something that can really simplify this process, because I want to take a big concept and make it simple for you to make the most out of your brand and leadership today. Ask yourself 2 questions. Who do you serve? who is the
Okay.
one person, and you see them in their mind and you know who they are and you understand their desires better than anyone in the world. And then the second question, what is the one impact you're going to make? Because your business is not your brand. Your brand is saying, this is a promise I'm going to keep. So what's the one impact? And I'll just share some examples. Steve Jobs, his vision was that he was going to empower the individual with easy to use technology. That he says, I'm not going to sell you computers. I'm going to give you this. You're going to have this
Right.
Apple experience, and you're going to have the ability to put something into the world that you want. And that's why even in the early days of like the iMac and everything, he sold to 5% of the consumer tech market and made 90% of the revenue.
Wow.
So industry leading brands simply are higher impact and they demand greater profitability because they're pulling a set of levers. And these are human elements. The visceral connection is what gives you the engagement. And that's why they make the money that they do.
Right. I mean,
Yeah.
and you're talking about also having a creative culture. Now, how does that play into the
Absolutely. So
human
we just
element
did
in the
step
business?
one to create the foundation of an industry leading brand. The second one is you need to create a message. And I'm not saying that you go and hire a marketing agency to do this, but you need to share the philosophy behind what you do. And for Steve Jobs, it was think different, right? He had always studied the great minds. He had always revered artists, and he was this puritanical master craftsman in his own mind. You know, he actually was not a tech person. He did not create any of these devices. He was the visionary and he had that message. So think different. If you think about this, this is not an intellectual process. This is an emotional
Mm.
revelation. Finding your brand message means finding the words to express what is closest to your own heart.
It's powerful. Now, think about it like this. I want you to kind of share this with us now because I had a sense we're talking about big companies like Apple. Okay,
Mhm.
a lot of people are entrepreneurs or solopreneurs and are not a big Apple. So, how does this message fit them?
It's the exact same process because I'll tell you what, the Apple brand was the success because Steve Jobs started with 10 people. When he was a 20-year-old kid, he had $2,000. His family would created the first assembly line. A brand always starts with 10 customers. You have to understand the desires that they have better than anyone in the world. And you have to practice on 10 or 20 people. So actually, all of these brands started the exact same way. They started with 10 or 20 diehard fans because they were not thinking about business at first. Your business is just a vehicle to
Right.
deliver your brand promise. That's why I say this is a shakedown process. You need to focus on the three things that mean you have a brand because you could pay anyone to run your business. There's
Okay.
lots of people who can run your business, but you want to have a brand first and then build a company around it. And you need these steps because they're the things that connect human beings to each other. And tribe, the word tribe is a great description of a brand, but you know, it has to be smart. It has to be small and they have to be visible, you know, that direct connection with people. This is not like,
Right.
oh, wait till you get $1 million and you can hire someone to do something. None of the top brands started that way. None of them. It would all started with $2,000, a big dream, and a family that was willing to give sweat labor.
There you go. There you go. I mean, and that's one of the things sometimes we all get caught up on is, having how much revenue or how much asset do we have to start with. What you're saying is just start wherever you are. That's where you should be starting then,
That's
correct?
right. And this is a paradigm. Again, we don't need more information. I think that we're overloaded on information. And like Steve Jobs himself says, that you can never have more than three priorities ever to be successful. So this is my way of taking this big idea and condensing it into what are actions you can take right now that will separate you permanently from the business realm into the realm of of influence and long-term leadership. And again, unlocking that potential in people. Visionary leaders like John F. Kennedy going to the moon, Steve Jobs, Oprah Winfrey. Yeah, they are really good at unlocking human potential. Most
Wow.
people feel like they can't do anything at a certain point. But that visionary steps and says, we can go to the moon in 10 years. And suddenly,
Right.
that ability to accomplish it, it flies back in time. And it animates people, and suddenly they're working together. And a big thing is excellence. So now we're going to talk about culture. If you cannot intentionally create culture, you can't have a brand.
Okay.
And why I want to really get into this. Most entrepreneurs never create culture. They kind of bumble around, and again, it's shuffling. You might have a really excited environment during startup, but most of the time you're just creating by default. So here's an example of Apple. And I share this example because everybody knows who Apple is.
Right.
You know what a computer is, you know where the buttons are. It's. But Steve Jobs' real superpower was creating teams. And what he did with Apple is, because his vision was so unique and his message was so dialed in, he created a team of about 10 people. And that team had a culture of innovation. He says your job is to invent the future with easy to use devices. And so basically, there was a 5-year period where a group of 12 people invented 5 new industries in 5 years.
Wow.
And it was a dozen people. And these people, if you think about this, they didn't have a fraction of the resources of any of the large computing companies. So culture controls the inputs and gives you those results. So if you want to innovate, to be an industry leader, you can't just invent something once, because that's just a product lifestyle. If you invent something, it goes like this, it grows, it's up here, and it declines. As soon as someone makes something better, cheaper, or more hyped, you're gone.
Right.
That is not true with industry leaders. Industry leaders start ahead and they never stop innovating, because the people are given the green light. Hey, experiment, fail, but do it all here and be excellent and drive each other to excellence. Steve Jobs said that these are A players, that an A player will never tolerate being around a person who doesn't drive themselves to the pinnacle of performance.
Wow. I mean, so I think when you shared, I know you keep saying it's a paradigm. So what you're saying is that these are just solid principles that if we employ them, that we can get some of the same results. And in neurolinguistic program, we call that modeling. If we
Yes,
follow excellence, we can model excellence. That means you can get there
that's right.
faster, quicker, easier than if you try to forge along by yourself and try to create
That's exactly
new
right.
paths.
Because there's this question, right? And I work with successful companies. They're making plenty of money. They have great products. They build great teams. Their customers love them. But they need to ask themselves this question: how do I get from just having a great business to being an industry leading brand? And that's my
Mhm.
answer. Let me show you. These are the 3 things. It's going to show you what to do so that you have the focus and consistency to up level your brand, so that you are not just disrupting your market for 6 months or 2 years. That's not what your potential is. Your potential is reaching for your highest achievement, of saying, this is the impact I'm going to make, and I'm going to give myself the time to prove myself right.
There you go. I love it. So how can they get in touch with you, Noel?
Absolutely. The first thing you can do if you just want to learn about this large paradigm and see the story is you can read Vision Driven Profit. It's on Amazon and Kindle Unlimited. That is my gift to you, to see from start to finish how this looks in this brand. And eventually there will be 5 books. You can also go to my website and look at my shakedown. Now that you know what to do to have an industry leading brand, I'll talk about how I show you how to take these larger principles and give you the prompts. And it's a shakedown that helps you position your brand as the number one in your market. It helps you identify visionary leadership traits. It helps you create this structure, this foundation. And then, of course, there's all the rest of the stuff like public relations and content and the stuff that you know you need in your business. But it is specifically to help you become the number one brand as quickly as possible.
I love it. I love it. So what would you like to leave with the audience? I mean, you shared a lot of great things with us in a very short period of time, but you
Yes.
packed it in there. So what would you like to leave with the audience today, Noel?
Yes. That we think it's going to be about money or about fame or about something we can measure externally. We sometimes get hung up on that. But in my experience, the biggest loss is always regret. So
Mm,
my encouragement to you is have a vision, have it be large, have it animate you, have it be your inspiration, even if it's not here, have it be your fuel, and think 20 years out and be specific, but then really prepare yourself to look at the cake in 20 years. Maybe you're at your retirement party or your 75th birthday, and remember that each candle is a reckoning for how you spent a year of your life. So I'm going to
mm.
ask you, if you had to retire tomorrow, would you be satisfied with the level of impact you've made? Or is there something more you have to give?
Wow. Thank you. Thank you so much, Noel, for being on the show today. I
Thank
mean, you
you.
you are a powerhouse in what you do and your specialty and how you actually communicate that. And we also like to thank the listeners for kind of hanging in there with us for and sharing this moment.
Thank you.
You know, we really, really appreciate it. You know, guys, remember that true success comes when you embrace what I call the legit mindset. That is, you keep learning, you growing, expanding, and transforming every day. You know, if this episode kind of resonates with you, first of all, you want to reach out to Noelle, and maybe she can help you with what you do. And then if you need something that's preventing you from becoming the best version of yourself, and you want to kind of go through those blind spots and figure out what's actually holding you back, please use the link below and schedule a free clarity call with me. Let's unlock your full potential together. I'm Curtis Mccullom. Make it a great day. And don't forget, please like, subscribe, and share the show.